and welcome back. Today we are here with the incredibly inspiring Fiona Oakes. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
You are one of the most accomplished female runners in world history. You hold 4 world records from marathon running, and altogether you've won 11 marathons. You have completed Marathon des Sables twice, which is said to be the toughest foot race. You won both the Antarctic Ice Marathon and the North Pole Marathon. You are a 2:38 marathon runner. You have 16 course records. You are also a firefighter, author, star of the documentary Running for Good, directed by the co-director of What the Health, and founder of the Tower Hill Stables Animal Sanctuary, home to around 500 animals, which you say is your reason for running.
That's absolutely correct, yeah.
So let's get into the questions. You describe your younger years as an extraordinarily miserable time. You were vegetarian at 3 and went vegan at 6. Why do you think you had this compassion and understanding at such a young age?
I don't know. I've looked back, actually. I've used the 2 years of the pandemic to kind of, rather than be kind of confrontational, kind of to look inside myself and contemplate. Because my life has been such a whirlwind, I've never actually stopped to think in depth why I'm doing things. It's just everything comes from the heart and I just go for it if I think it's right. I rejected meat at a very, very young age, being vegetarian. I will say this, my parents neither were vegetarian, neither particularly big animal lovers. It was just that I've always felt this connection with animals. It goes back longer than I can actually remember. It's almost like part of me. And I say that, you know, I wasn't some super bright kid, you know, that I made this decision that, you know, I'm going to be vegan. I didn't even know what vegan was at the age of 6. I just knew the concept. I didn't want to harm animals. Anything I could do to not be party to the harming of animals, I wanted to go with. And I was very, very fortunate that although my mother wasn't vegetarian even, she went with it. She understood it and she went with it. We had a role model. My mum was a pianist. She was later on a nurse, but she was a pianist. And she had a music teacher back in the 1950s who was a vegan lady. So she had some connection with veganism. And she was able to go to this lady and ask her to articulate in adult terms what it was that I was feeling and sensing as a child. But I can't remember any pivotal moments in my life. It's just part of who I am, to want to love and nurture and care for and not harm any creature, whether it be, it's so natural to not want to hurt another human being. I can't understand why it's not so natural for people to make that next connection and want to harm just any other being, and those beings being animals. So that's basically it. I always tell people I'm nothing special. There's nothing, you know, amazing about me. It's just, this is who I am, and I've followed that path and been true to that path all my life, and I hope I can continue to do so. But it's not a big formulation that I'm sitting there thinking, you know, when I was 6, right now I'll go vegan and I'll have an animal sanctuary in 20 years and then I must break some world records. It's just a journey that I'm kind of on now, and I don't know where I know I probably never know the full destination. It's just life is just a long journey for me, and I'm constantly learning and getting to know myself. But the animals, it's non-negotiable. It's always been there in me.
I love that. I love that so much. I feel like hearing that, it comes through to me as understanding that it's your purpose, and God gives us purposes, and it's our job to carry those out. And it's a pleasure when we do.
That's so true. That is so true.
The next question. As a teen, you developed a problem with your knee, which led to 17 surgeries and ultimately leading to complete removal of one of your kneecaps. You were told you weren't going to walk and had to register, or were told you had to register as disabled. What was the initial cause of the knee issue, and does it still hurt you?
Yeah, it was a grocery store. It was on the back of my kneecap. I had a tumour that had to be removed. And eventually the kneecap just crumbled. I was in and out of hospital many times, leg in full cast, 6 weeks non-weight bearing, going back, having another arthroscopy, having another look, seeing if there's anything more they could do to correct it. And the problem was that the other knee, which wasn't encumbered, was becoming encumbered because I was spending so long weight bearing on that knee. It was a bleak time. I don't really, it's part of me and it's part of my makeup and what makes me me. So rather than reject that time, I kind of embrace it, and it's probably given me greater purpose at a young age. And it's all, I've very often I kind of say to people, they think that I've got a very phenomenal kind of handle on always being positive, and I think I've got so many things to be positive about. I remember a time when I couldn't walk. I remember a time when I was literally, couldn't move very well, and after the surgeries there was so much pain, and I thought, I wouldn't be able to fulfill the things that I love doing anymore, being outdoors. It does still hurt when I run, but it's manageable. I don't complain about it because there's always someone or something out there that's far worse off than yourself. And that's what you have to remember. I mean, my days are really challenging. I get up at 3:30 in the morning, I work through. I've got a very big work ethic. I've not got any particular talents, but I've got a big work ethic. That's probably the thing that I've got going for me. So when I kind of get up in the morning, it's still dark. I tend to think that I'm very blessed to be able to watch almost like a curtain, the nightfall go, and open the curtains on another beautiful day. And I always, before I get up, I tend to remember the things, rather than thinking, oh, it's 3:30 and I've got to get up and it's really cold and it's raining. Always remember the things I've got to be grateful for. And there are so many blessings. And I say, I'm not a victim. There's water. I can go to a tap or a faucet, and turn it on, and I should have been clued up there, and there's water come out and I can drink it. I'm no victim, and I think that's what we all have to remember. Look at the things that we have rather than constantly wanting to beat ourselves up about the things that we will never have and can't attain. And that's one of the things that I'm going way off tangent here, but when you talk about the social media side of things, I'm not big on that side of life, because I think it gives a false reality, especially to the young, that feel like, with the Instagram pictures, I think kids look at that, or younger people look at that and think that everybody on there is happy and they're leading a perfect life, and that's not the case. And it's not bad. It's not wrong to feel down. It's not wrong to feel sad. It's part of the makeup of a balanced life. Yeah. And when I put pictures on, if I have to, they're always like pretty raw, like one take and that's it. And I'm not doctoring them with filters and stuff like that. And I think that, the most important thing to remember is that you are very blessed if there are perfect moments within your life, and you can grab those moments and acknowledge them. And those moments might be something really, kind of transient or brief, and just looking up and seeing, feeling the sun on your face and looking up and seeing the animals just for that second, and just realizing how blessed you are to be on this beautiful planet and able to walk and see and talk, all these things that people take for granted. So that's just me. I mean, I've got a bad knee. It hurts when I run, but big deal. It doesn't define me.
Yeah, I get it. What does it feel like? What type of pain can you compare it to? Does it feel like a lot of pressure? Does it feel like it's sharp or stabbing?
It's an aching pain. And to be honest with you, when I was doing the road marathons, when you get to about 20 miles in a road marathon, that's where they say the race begins. And when you're in, the one thing you don't want to do in a road race is to break your gait or to slow down. You can't really speed up. So that constancy after about 2 hours of the same gait, the same pressure on a flat road, that really does hurt. And I remember sometimes, literally praying, please let me get to the finish line. Please let me do this for the animals. It's difficult. It's less the more adventure races I've done, like the Marathon des Sables, and because you can stop and you can start and you can change your gait, you've got uphills and downhills and stuff like that, it hurts less. But I'm always I do dislocate my knee very, very easily, and I have done that quite a few times. And I did wonder and worry about running on snow and ice, because that's a big, you know, potential for dislocating. It hurts, but I'm very, very good at blocking out pain. I won't say I embrace pain, but I've learned how to harness it to my advantage, if you like. As I say, I've no great talent for running. I mean, obviously I was told I wouldn't walk properly again. I don't run properly. And indeed, when Keegan made the film, he kept sending me footage of the film to kind of okay, and I'm like not watching it. I want to see myself on a small screen, and less of all see myself on a big screen. So when I arrived for the film premiere and Rich Roll was there, and he was like, you know, congratulations, you must be really proud of the film. And I'm going, I don't know, I haven't seen it yet. You haven't seen it? I'm like, no, I don't want to watch myself. And I was going to kind of sit at the back of the cinema, and it was packed, and like kind of drop something, you know, and then an hour later come up and say, oh dear, I've missed the film. Oh dear. Never. But he said, no, he kind of dragged me by my hair and said, you're going to sit next to me and you're going to watch this film. So I was kind of thinking, okay, calm down. You've got like this you know, great film man, you know, cameraman, you know, great location. It can't be all bad. Please don't let it be all bad. You've got all the gear on. You must, you know, it can't be that bad. And when I saw myself limping out the desert like Quasimodo kind of thing, I realized I do limp very badly when I run. But you know, hey ho, it gets me there. It may not be great technique, but I get from A to B relatively quickly. So it's not all bad. But yeah, it's just what I do for the animals. So you know, it's all the least I can do is to put myself through a little bit of discomfort when they're living their lives. Well, I wouldn't even call them their lives, they're existing their period on this earth in terrible pain. It's the least I can do to put, you know, and I always, it seems very, very trite to say that, you know, even in like the desert races where you're there for a week and it's really tough, to say that you're suffering. Yeah, you are suffering. And for me, failure is not an option. I want to do well for the animals. But it always seems like a little bit banal language, because there are so many people on this planet and animals that are just suffering so horrendously. Always keep those in it's always in the forefront of my mind. So I don't like to complain ever about anything, because it's, you know, I've got very little to complain about in the scheme of things.
Yeah. And I think this is very helpful for people to hear too, because we all kind of get down and we all feel like, you know, at those moments that you say is you said so eloquently, it's just the transition of life, you know, it's good, it will pass, it's bad, it will pass. And it's natural to feel happy, it's natural to feel sad and angry. It's a beautiful blessing to experience all these emotions as a human being. So I think it's important for people to hear that you do suffer, you do go through pain, and you do come out of it, and you are a champion. And not only do you get to that finish line, you win most of the time. So you mentioned a little bit of the documentary, so that leads me into the next question. And is it pronounced Marathon des Sables?
Yeah, Marathon des Sables, yeah. Marathon of the Sand, yeah.
You had a documentary made on you called Running for Good, which highlights your first run in Marathon des Sables, which means the Marathon of Sand, and called MDS for short. It is known as the toughest foot race on earth and the daddy of all ultras. It's a 6-day, 156-mile ultra marathon. It's the equivalent distance of 6 marathons across sand dunes, mountain ranges, dry lakes, and abandoned villages in North Africa in the blistering heat, where people have died attempting this. You came down with a respiratory infection 8 days before leaving for this race, and also had broken toes. Tell us about this whole experience.
Yeah, I mean, just to clarify, I've actually done Marathon des Sables 3 times.
3 times?
And the first time I did it, okay, my running journey, just bang me on the face if I go off tangent, just remind me. But basically, the running is, I'm blessed to be able to run. And I have joked in the past and said, oh, I hate running. I kind of, I've got other things I'd rather be doing in terms of looking after the animals, so I have to set quite a large portion of time, and I do hammer myself very hard when I get out there, but I'm always aware that I'm lucky to be able to do it. So I started my running journey and it was just kind of marathons, straightforward road marathons, big races where I could get, if I could get a top 20 place in the London Marathon, the Berlin Marathon, the world's major marathons, that was something that you could literally hit people with and say, as a vegan, I've done this, so it's not prohibitive to doing anything. That's why I started the Vegan Runner Club back in 2004. It was an opportunity to get the word vegan out there when it wasn't so popular, it wasn't so fashionable. So running through the streets of London alone wearing a vegan vest was a very, very effective way of just familiarizing an audience that would not be necessarily, you know, aware of a vegan being an athlete. After a few years of doing that, I wasn't getting engendering the interest, not for much me personally or for even the sanctuary, because it was very good free advertising for the sanctuary because we've got no budget for advertising or anything like that. But I noticed that the emphasis when I was interviewed was not on the veganism, and that's where I wanted it to be. They were quite willing to say, you know, you've got this injury or you've got this sanctuary or you're a firefighter, but this was the reason I was out there. This was the reason I was out there running. So then I decided to kind of drop a tier of marathons because I was going for gold standard marathons, the world's major marathons, and trying to place in them. So I then went down a tier and thought, well, okay, I'll go around the world, I'll win marathons, I'll break course records. That will get interest. Did to a certain extent, but then I kind of always joke and say, you know, one of my friends and suggested, and people say, you've got friends that suggest you do this, Fiona, what do your enemies tell you to do? But anyway, this guy Paul said, look, you've run as fast as you possibly can, you've got these great results on the road, why don't you, if you want to promote veganism, be the first vegan woman to do this Marathon des Sables back in 2012. I've not really heard of it. I didn't know anything. I thought you'd drop off the end of the earth if you ran past 26.2 miles. I wasn't familiar with these ultra races because I'm not a kind of geeky runner. I mean, literally, the only time I'm thinking about running is contemplating where I'm going to find some socks or some kit to go running in, and then literally going as quick as I can when I'm out there to get back to the animals. So I kind of said, okay, that sounds like a good idea. I'll go for it. I didn't really actually think what it entailed too much. I thought, I'm just going to go for it. And then as the event drew closer, I'm starting to think, this was kind of tough. You know, what have I let myself in for here? But, you know, I thought, okay, I'm a 2:38 marathon runner. I've got to be able to do this. And I'm very upper body strong because of what I do with the animals and firefighting. Unfortunately, the week before the race, there was an incident at the sanctuary when one of the elderly horses went down, and I had to get to her feet myself. And she did thankfully get to her feet, but in doing so, she trod on one of mine, and that's when I fractured my toes. So now I'm faced with going to the toughest foot race on the planet in the desert with 2 fractured toes. But you know, I kind of announced the fact that I was going to try and be the first vegan woman to do this race. So there were a lot of people around the world kind of really cheering me on, you know, really going, going to support me in this. And I didn't want to let anybody down. So I kind of, it was foolish, but if I hadn't have gone, I wouldn't have known whether I was going to be able to do it. So my doctor knew, obviously, and my immediate family, but nobody else knew. I didn't let anybody know that I got these fractured toes. And I went off out there. And they always say, because unless you're used to running in like 50+ degree heat in deserts, your feet are going to swell when you get out there. So sure that you've got shoes a size too big and they're all stitched up with Velcro so you can put gaiters on, so you don't want sand in your shoes. Do not want sand in your shoes. So before I went to the race, I could hardly cram the foot with the fractured toes into the shoes. But I thought, hey, I'm a 2:38 marathon runner, I'll be okay. But it was a rough ride, let's put it like that. And by what they call the long stage, the long march, I was with some guys from my tent, and we stopped at this overnight checkpoint. It was pitch black, and it was like walking into hell. It was literally just loads of people who would look like war-torn, like hovering over these little stoves in the desert, and there were sandstorms. It was just awful. And I said to one of the guys, what do you think's going on with my foot? Because he got a better head torch than I had, and I couldn't quite see. And he said in this very posh, kind of stiff upper lip British accent, well, I'm not a doctor, you understand, but what I surmise is that I think it's the bone that's sticking out of your little toe, Fiona. And yeah, the bone was sticking out of my little toe. And all I could think of at that point was not, I'm going to pack up, or this is terrible. Oh, don't tell anyone, because I don't want pulling out the race. I desperately wanted to do this for the animals. So I got through it, and I didn't place too badly in the race, but I wanted to go back the next year and do it again without fractured toes. I couldn't, because I did the North Pole and the world records the following year. The year after that, I went back, and I just wanted to do well in this race. And indeed, for the first couple of days, I was doing really, really well in the race, and I was up there on the leaderboard. But unfortunately, one of my tent mates, a guy called Mike Julien, he was out there for a similar purpose that I was out there. He got a reason. He had leukemia, and he was on chemotherapy, and he wanted to try and prove to other people that this illness did not need to define you or define what you could do. And he was really struggling. And on the second day, just to give you an idea, I was taking about 4 hours and placing in each stage. He was taking 11 hours near cutoff and really struggling. And he came back to the tent crying on the second day and said he couldn't continue, because even if he could get through the next day, which was like 35, 36K or whatever, he knew he couldn't do the long stage in this state. He couldn't get through like 100K or whatever it was. And I stepped in and said, you know, if you can get through tomorrow under your own steam and you want to continue for the long stage, I'll stay with you and I'll mentor you around. Even though I was, in effect, I mean, throwing away a chance of a place in the race. But for me, running is truly about it's compassion over competition, whether it be compassion for another human being or for the animals. That is what it's about. And indeed, the next day I was riding really high in the ratings, and I'd gone to bed. I'd laid on the sand in my sleeping bag, as we do under this makeshift tent, and I heard clapping at the finish line, and I got up to see who was coming in, because Mike wasn't back, and it was Mike, and he threw himself into my arms and said, does your offer still stand for tomorrow? Because I really want to kind of continue on if you'll help me. And of course I'd help him, and we did. We had some real dark moments out there. We were joined by another tent mate, Vicky, who was really struggling, and she was frightened of being alone in the desert. This race was very, very tough. It wasn't what she expected. She'd done a lot of training, but she just felt that she hadn't got the kind of endurance and the mindset to be alone out there. So I said, let's just we'll join a little group, you do what I say and I'll get you through it. And I was like literally this desert dominatrix, just pounding them, just keep going. And we did get through it. But literally, I mean, my tactic was, okay, if you are tired and you cannot run, that is fine. What we do not want to do is waste time at checkpoints, because when you stop at checkpoints, you become kind of intoxicated in this idea of rest, and you can't allow yourself to do that. You've got to keep going. So I said, when we get to a checkpoint, you sort out what you need and we get back out there. And I remember that we were just on dusk, and we'd just been in this checkpoint, and we came out the other side of the tents, and we just saw like this, not mountain, but very, very high jebel we'd got to get up. And Vicky, who was a barrister, a very together young woman, she just broke down and said, I cannot do it. I can't go on. So I shook her, kind of what have I done? I've slapped the barrister. What have I done? And and I said, okay, that is fine. If you are not going to continue on, Mike, put your bag down. I'm putting my bag down, because we're not going anywhere without you. We started this together and we're going to finish it together, whether it be getting in that wagon and going back to, you know, the camp not completed, or we get through it together. And she pulled herself together, and we got through. Percy's always very renowned for liking sweets.
I have a whole question devoted to Percy.
And it was like, if you will do another kilometre with us, Vicky, you get another one of Percy's sweets. And we just got on through like that. And Do you know what people have said? I bet you regret doing it. I don't regret it. It's so much more reward for doing something for others than for yourself. And that's what the whole thing about Marathon des Sables is. So when Keegan contacted me in 2016, and I thought it was a joke originally, and he said he wanted to make a documentary and about somebody really inspiring within the vegan movement. I was like, oh yeah, check it out. Who? And he said, you. And I was like, oh, me, would want to make a film about me. And he just wanted to then, I said, I can't go back to the North Pole. I can't go around the world again. I can't do all those things again. He said, I'd like to film you actually in a race. And I don't like have loads of cuttings, or I don't have some sort of room dedicated to me and my running or something. So I don't have a lot of film footage or camera footage. I'm not a big one for, like, I'm not one of those people that would walk into a room going, hey, take a picture of myself. So he said, which race? And I said, possibly Marathon des Sables, because it's a big enough race to get you where you need to be to get very, very good shots, good cinematography. And that's why we kind of went for Marathon des Sables. I love running in the wilderness. I love being alone. I love pushing myself to the limit. I love challenging myself. I love pushing myself to the barriers of pain, because I think it makes you a stronger person. I think to know what suffering is, you've got to have suffered yourself in whatever setting that suffering is. I can push myself probably beyond what most people can, because I'm not doing it for me. I'm not running for a time, a trophy, a Garmin, or whatever you're going to win. I'm running for something much more precious and important than that. And yeah, that's how the film came about. Still seems weird to me that there's a film about me, and still seems weird that people write and say I've seen the film and it's really or inspiring or it's inspirational. That's what the film was made for. It wasn't made to celebrate me. It was kind of made to inspire others. And if it can do that for one person, then that's the reward. That's all the reward I'm seeking. I'm not seeking anything for myself.
That's so beautiful. So I just want to paint a little bit more detailed picture for the audience of how incredibly difficult this race is. So a couple of things. Water is rationed. So you're running through the desert, which temperatures get up to 122 degrees Fahrenheit, I've read. And you have to be self-sufficient. So that means you have to take a pack and run with your mat that you're going to sleep on that night, your sleeping bag that you're going to sleep on that night. There's open air tents, so you're not even closed off to bugs or what type of creatures are in the desert. God only knows, like scorpions or whatever. Snakes. So you sleep in an open air tent, so you have to worry about that. You have to carry all of your food in your pack for 6 days.
It's 7 days they make you carry it. Yeah.
And so that's a lot of weight that you have to run up sand dune mountains. With all of that weight on your back. And then you have to mentally get through it. I mean, that's insanely difficult. And you did it 3 times, and you're an incredible mentor to people on this race. I mean, that's
I mean, it's kind of weird actually. In 2012, Paul, the guy that shone his head torch on my feet, he came and he said, well, when you go out there, all you want to do is get this race done. You want to, it's kind of this holy grail of running, and just to say you've done Marathon des Sables is it's a highly respected thing. And Paul said to me he'd met a chap in 2012 that had done it the previous year. He'd come back the next year, that year we were there, and he packed up on day 1, and he just couldn't do it. He just couldn't face what was ahead of him. The rose-tinted spectacles had come off, and he remembered how brutal it was, because obviously the euphoria at the finish line, you forget, you've just done it. But when you go back there, you realize what you've let yourself in for, and it is tough. I mean, to get you packed down to anything like something that's carryable. I mean, for me, I'm at the moment I weigh 48 kilos, so you don't want to be carrying a lot of weight. So you pack probably about 7 or 8 kilos And that's got to be all your food. And you're right, food is heavy. You can only have 2,000 calories a day, really, and to carry. That's the minimum. Water is a problem because it's heavily rationed. If you need more water, you take a time penalty. I wouldn't say that I've ever struggled in that department. I have struggled out in the desert and been frightened that if I don't see a checkpoint soon and get some more water, I'm going to collapse. And I have been around people who've collapsed and dehydrated. A lot of IV fluid goes into people, but again, you take a big time penalty for that. You don't wash, you know spare clothes, you know nothing. You've literally got your bedroll, you've got your sleep mat, you've got your food, you've got your medications to carry, everything you need for the whole week, including Percy. He has to be carried because he refuses to run. In fact, one day, Percy always travels here in my pack, and I'm going along and I'm putting some water on myself. And then I'm looking down and I'm going like this, fiddling for something. And I'm thinking, I've just drowned Percy in water. And that's made him really heavy. Like, he got really, really heavy. And I'm thinking, Percy, would I throw you out of the pack? No, I'd be the person going back on the whole stage to look for him. But yeah, it's a tough event. And it takes no prisoners. Mentally, it's very tough. You've just got to be very, very strong to get through it. You know, you probably can get through it. It's how much you want to get through it, how determined you are. And I want very badly, because I want to do it for the animals. And that's a pressure that I've always felt, in terms of the fact that I found it hard, certainly through the formative years of my running, to get any positivity for veganism through my running. But I've always been very well aware that there could potentially be an awful lot of negativity if you fail. So if you don't complete Marathon des Sables or something like that. And I've had a lot of phone calls from media and press over the years. I went to Namibia and did an ultra stage race, and it was kind of, you know, a big deal, and there were lions and there was a lot of goings on in the race. It was a really tough race. And when I returned home, I had a call from the BBC, and I thought they might want to talk about the race in Namibia that I'd just done, but they wanted to talk about a lady who sadly passed away on Everest, but they wanted me to comment because she was a vegan. I said, well, I didn't know her, didn't you? Well, she was a vegan. I said, well, I don't know every vegan on the planet, this is 2016, before it kind of exploded. So I've always been aware that potentially it could implode on you, wanting to champion the veganism. If you don't do well, then it's probably going to be, oh, because she's a vegan or something like that, she couldn't do it. But so I've always felt that kind of pressure. But yeah, I mean, for me, being out in nature and running, and just being able to run and concentrate on the very bare necessities of life, which is like getting from A to B, and having a place of sanctuary at the end of it. And when I say a place of sanctuary, there's nothing there apart from an open-sided tent and possibly 7 individuals you've never met before. But the camaraderie of just knowing that you're safe, you haven't got to go back out there into these brutal conditions, and even these horrible bag meals that you carry, you know, you look forward to. It really, really does make you appreciative of every single thing you have available to you in normal life, and to not take that for granted, and to make you force yourself to know that many, many people and animals around the world do not have these same privileges, and they are privileges, and to always have those at the forefront of your mind. And if there's anything you can do to help another individual anywhere on this planet to make their life a little bit better, then you should do it, and you should feel proud and blessed to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's true. So I have kind of a burning question still on this MDS topic. You were so out of it one night, you poured Tabasco on your toes.
Yes, that is correct. Yes, I did. Yeah, basically, in 2017, when Keegan was going to film, I'd been hand rearing 36k little lambs, and it was a challenge. And one of the very, very sick ones died, and the caves are what we call the runts of the litter. They're the third lamb, and the farmers don't want them because obviously the ewes can't raise more than 2 properly, so they take the third one away. And I'd been raising 36. I'd got some sort of chest infection. It was coming in out of the winter anyway. I've been I had to go on antibiotics the week before the race, and they finished on the morning of that the race started. I just felt so dreadful, and the plan was, at one point I wasn't even going to go out there and try and compete. I was so ill a couple of days beforehand, and Keegan did say, if you could just come and I could get some film footage around the race, even if you don't want to run, and if you could possibly run the first stage, that would be fantastic. Even if you walk, then at least I've got some footage. So I went out there, and we messed up on the first stage because he thought I was going to be running I thought I was going to be running a lot slower than I was, and I was always ahead of where his driver was taking him, and I finished really high up. I just get out there and something clicks in the back of my mind, and I could do it. But yeah, I mean, it was a challenge, it was a struggle, and I got confused between a little pot of iodine and a Tabasco that I take for my to put on my food to make the food taste a little bit more like what I have at home, because I always have a lot of Tabasco at home. And it nearly sent me through the tent roof. That's all I'm saying. It was a little, but I thought it's probably good, very, very good disinfectant, Tabasco. So, it was a win. I was a little bit pleased that I'd put so much on my toes, because I don't carry an awful lot with me. But yeah, I love it. I just love to challenge myself, and I love to challenge myself for others. That's, so the race it's extraordinary. It can be what you want to make it. It can be a bucket list for some people. Oh, I've done MDS, that's another one to try for the bucket list. But it can be a life-changing, life-enhancing experience. That's what I found it to be.
I think the person he was also in the documentary who created MDS, he said that it's designed to push people to their limits and beyond. And you said if one pushes themselves beyond their absolute limit, you will come back a different person. Do you feel like you came back a different person?
Yeah, definitely in 212, I did come back a different person. Previous to that, I just run in relatively a sanitary environment, in terms of the fact that, I'd run on roads, I'd train on a treadmill or on roads, I'd gone off, I'd done a road marathon, which lasted 2:45, 2:30, whatever it lasted. And that was it. This was like a week of reflection, contemplation, getting to know yourself. I came back. It's like my biggest mantra is always know yourself. And I think a lot of people are out there judging others. They don't even know themselves. I probably don't know myself. It's like literally, but it allowed me a week to introduce and become much more familiar and acquainted with the real Fiona, the real who I am. And it was a blessing. And these experiences, these races, yeah, there is a competitive edge to them, but more than that, it's a great privilege to be able to go deeper inside yourself and find out more about yourself, and how tough and how strong and how dedicated, determined you really are. And what your true abilities are, which very many people never find. They never actually have that opportunity to do that. They say it's the safest, most dangerous environment you can be in, this race, because you pay for repatriation of your body in case you die out there. That's part of the race entry. Because it has happened. It happened, somebody died in a race last year. We were with someone that we had to let off the flares for in 212, and he went to Casablanca Hospital with a heart attack, and he was in an induced coma for 3 days. So it's very, 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 very difficult. But yeah, it's a very great opportunity to find out much more about yourself if you're open to learning. Some people just don't want to know, but I do. I mean, that's probably my greatest strength, is that I know very little, but at least I acknowledge that, and I want to learn more. I'm not one of these people that thinks, oh, I know everything about it. I know nothing. But I'm thirsty for knowledge, and that's keeps you moving forward.
Nice. As an elite runner, training is extremely important. Please tell us about your training regimen, physically and mentally. So you wake up, super early, and then you run almost a marathon a day, and then you go back and take care of the animals. So tell us about that, and what does that do for you mentally as well as physically?
Yeah, I mean, it depends what sort of race I'm doing. If it's a road marathon, I can basically tell you exactly what I do training wise. I run 9 times a week. I do 3 lots of speed, 10 by 800, 20 by 400, 6 by 1 mile pushes on those days, which are Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. I do a recovery run in the evenings of about 8 miles. On Wednesday, I'll do kind of a longer midweek run of about just under 2 hours, and then on the Friday I'll do some hills with a longer run, probably about an hour and a half, and then I'll do anything between 22 and 28 miles on the Sunday and take Monday off. For the ultra running, it's slightly different. It's not so much based on speed is important, but you're obviously going a lot slower, so it's endurance. So everything works around the animals, and I never would put the running before the animals. So you have to be kind of creative with your running. So sometimes I'll run 3 times a day. I might say I've got a really heavy day, so at the time in the day when I'm going to be free is early morning, so I'll go and run 10 miles early morning. Midday, things quieten down a bit, so lunchtime, pop out and do another 10 miles, and then in the evening before bed do another 10 miles, and that allows you to get 30 miles in, but not at great cost expense in terms of what you're doing in between. I like on Christmas Day, I thought, this is a good time to go out and run 25 miles because it's not busy. The previous Christmas I ran 50 miles on Christmas Day, and I did it early morning and late afternoon. So I kind of, it's a different sort of running. It's slower, but it's more important the time on your feet. So when I kind of started the ultra running, I was very much a road runner, and with road running in marathons, the taboo thing is, or for me, you want to finish at the pace you started at, and if you can do that, you're going to run a decent time. The mileage you do in the week, the speed sessions, is pretty much an equation that if you're lucky enough to taper well, taper's always very important, and it's very often overlooked actually. You get good weather conditions, you don't feel ill, and you haven't got an injury on the day, you can pretty much say, I think I can run this time today, approximately within a couple of minutes. But with the ultra running, it was hard for me to get into my head. If you want to run 20 miles, it's no good just thinking I'll push harder and get back quicker. It's time on your feet that you need to do. You need to be prepared to be out there for a long time. That's what Vicky said back in 2014. She'd done the runs, but she wished she'd spend longer just going out for long hikes with a pack on, spent longer on her feet, built more endurance. I've got a lot of endurance because I was coming from this big road running kind of background where I'd for 10-12 weeks of a marathon cycle, I'd run 100 miles a week. You've got to run at minimum 100 miles a week to get the times. You really have. I have, and the top runners, when I've been very, very fortunate to be invited to races such as Amsterdam and Berlin, where you get to go to the technical meetings with the great African runners. They'll be running 140, 160 miles a week. I was blessed once to be invited out. I've been to Amsterdam. I've been invited by Jos Hermans to run the Amsterdam Marathon. And I spent the evening with, when I arrived, with Haile Gebrselassie. And he was explaining his training regime to me. And it's, up at 5 in the morning, doing his longer run, then there'll be speed in the evening. So you've got to put massive mileage in to get the quick times, because for a marathon you haven't got to run super quickly. I mean 10 miles an hour, but you've got to do it for 26.2 miles, which is a big challenge, because after 2 hours your body and your mind do start breaking down. It's different with the ultra running. I think with the ultra running and the time that you're out there, as long as you can find that time in a day, it does allow you to enjoy your running a bit more, because you're running slower. So you can look around you and see the beauty of nature and, spend time with yourself. I don't run with music or podcast or anything like that. I just run alone. I like to hear the birds. I like to hear the waves because I run on a sea wall. I like to be very spatially aware around me of what's going on. And sometimes I actually listen to my heart beating. I can actually hear my heart beating, and they're the things that I do. I'm not saying everybody should. You are right. I very rarely do take water when I'm running because I figure I don't have any fancy I've never had a coach for running. Back in the day when I did think I could benefit from some help before, you could Google sub 3-hour training plan. I didn't really know what I was doing. It was all trial and error, but nobody wanted to coach me because of the veganism. They said it was going to be counterproductive and a waste of their time. So I said, well, diet is not up for negotiation with me. It's all about promoting veganism. That is why we went to the lengths of affiliating to UK Athletics, the Vegan Runner Club, because it was the only way that I could stand on the start lines of the major marathons, because they're very protective of publicity. So you can't have something on your running vest that's not UK affiliated or athletics accredited. So you can't just have a slogan or the name of the sanctuary on it. It's got to be, you've got to be your club name. And they even for London Marathon certainly used to come around with perspex and measure the lettering to make sure that you weren't getting any naughty kind of sponsorship, because the big sponsors were very, very protective, because you were going to get airtime, you were going to get camera time, you were going to be on TV, and so you were going to get free advertising. So they were very, very protective of that. Having the Vegan Runner Club meant that I was able to promote the word veganism in the way I wanted to. But so it's never been I've never had a coach or anything fancy. I've never had physio or anything like that. I'm very, very raw and pure with my running. I just go out there and run, and I don't have any Stravas or Garmins or anything like that. I pretty much learned to judge everything up here. I say I've actually know that with computers have moved on, but I used to say you've got the most sophisticated computer about your person. Learn to use it and it will serve you well, because these gadgets that people wear, and they might be great for people, they're beeping, and I probably, if I had one, I'd probably look at it and trip over and break my leg or something like that. I just prefer to concentrate on me and as the person. And any gadget doesn't know well, they might do now, but it doesn't know if you've been ill or if you feel under the weather or if you're particularly tired. Those things, so you can factor that into what you're doing. I kind of, so back to the water and stuff, I don't carry like loads of gels and stuff. I don't use those, because I kind of work on this, making the training as hard as I can, because the race is going to be a lot harder, getting the best out of yourself. So I can quite happily run for 2.5, 3 hours without having a drop. I mean, I can get water, I've got other yards that I can go to with the animals on, but I like to make it tough for myself, because I know that in a race, certainly somewhere like Marathon the Sables, in a race, you're going to be running in a desert in extreme conditions that you're not used to. You're going to be running a pack, you're going to be living in conditions, you're going to be eating food you're not used to. If you're not used to suffering, it's going to come as a blooming big shock. In fact, when somebody described Marathon the Sables to me, so it's brutal, Fiona. They get you up about 4:30 in the morning, and your tent's ripped down from around you, and you're out there running for 20 odd miles a day. And I'm thinking, 4:30 in the morning, I can have a lay-in. It sounds okay to me, and all I've got to do all day, every day for 7 days is concentrate on running. So there's no mucking out to do, there's no animals, there's no firefighting. Wait, bring it on. This is equivalent of a holiday almost. But I like to make it tough, because I know it's going to be tough in the race, and you're simulating how you're going to feel in a race. You can't run 26.2 miles at 2:38 pace every day to train for a race, so you kind of embellish your training, making it hard in other ways, so that there are little luxuries. I do drink in a marathon. I do force myself to kind of take from water stations, but I don't have any fancy stuff in. The only thing I've ever drunk in a road marathon is water. And actually, when I've been to some of the technical meetings, I felt so embarrassed to be there. And believe you me, I mean, I don't look right to be at these technical meetings. They come to your hotel room and they ask you if you've got your own personal drinks bottles to put on the elite water stations. And I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? I don't have any special fluids or anything. So I have been known to take drinks bottles with water in, just tap water, and put them there to make it look like I've got some special drink like everyone else, and I haven't. But it works for me.
Fiona, that's so funny.
I've got the money for it, and I've been to races where like I've kind of stood next to people, and I'm thinking, I thought this was a half marathon, not a flipping up 200-mile race, and they've got like more gels, look like a grenade belt they're wearing with gels and stuff. I don't have that. I've got like 500 mouths to feed. I haven't got like time to think of my own. And it's like the bizarreness of the one meal a day. I only eat one meal a day, and people find that strange, but it works for me. I'm certainly not advocating anyone else do what I do. I'm just saying, if you are inspired by anything that I say, don't go and mimic it. Find your own way. It doesn't have to be marathons, your own journey in life where you can effectively make a difference. This is the way I've done. This is the model I've created, but it doesn't have to be your, the model's there by kind of being very determined and very disciplined, but it doesn't have to be this way. This is what I have had to do to get where I need to be, or where I want to be for the animals. It's no great denial. One meal a day is perfectly satisfactory. In fact, now, well, I was actually in Russia, and I was at the press conference, the IAAF press conference for the elite runners, and they laid on a big lunch for us the day before the race. And I'm with one of the Kenyan coaches, and he said, "Are you coming to lunch?" And I was a bit, well, no, I'm not actually. And he said, "Oh, why?" I said, "Well, I don't eat lunch." I was going to kind of make up some fib because I didn't want to look like foolish. And he said, "Oh, why is that?" I said, "Well, I only eat one meal a day." And he said, "Oh, the warrior diet." And I said, "Yes." "Oh yes, the warrior diet." "Yes, yes, the warrior diet." And he actually said a lot of the Kenyans do that, a lot of the athletes do that. And yeah, that was back in 2013. Now it's called intermittent fasting, and it's got fancy handles attached to it. Back in then, it was like, this is what I do, this works for me. They do say that it's better for digestion. You don't waste your body's energy digesting food. It's just different for everyone. It works for me. It probably wouldn't work for a lot of people. But I do. And then people say, "What is in this magic meal?" And I say, "Well, I don't really know, because my mum cooks them all still, and because I live with my mum and dad still, and some of the stuff is what we grow, and other stuff is what's donated, and some stuff is actually on date shelf life that people or shops donate for the pigs. So I just cut the bits off that I can't be used, and I eat that. And I say, rather than focusing on the actual food, the food that you're eating, I honestly and truly focus on other aspects of the food. I eat my food with my parents. How blessed am I to do that? It's food that is created with love by my mum, that always has been. I do not sit in a war-torn zone wondering, where the next meal is coming from, if I'm going to be safe, if I'm going to be displaced from my home. All these things mean so much to me. They truly and honestly do. The fact that I sit down with food on my plate, and that I don't go to bed hungry, that is an amazing thing for me. The fact that I have food, that I've never really been without food, is the blessing for me. So I'm not one of these, is it keto or paleo? Don't really know, don't know what they mean. You know what I mean? I just know that I've got food. And I do think, there again, I truly believe that rather than listening to someone else telling you exactly what to eat, listen to your own body. Your body will tell you what you need. If you're feeling tired, or you're not getting enough carbs, go out to those things. Learn to listen to yourself and understand yourself. And we're back to that. Know yourself. No one can know you as well as you can know you. So, figure out who you are and what you need yourself. Obviously, the aid of other people, advice from other people, but that's the most important thing for me.
What did you eat for the MDS? You said you took a bunch of sweet potatoes, but did you have any like dried food or seeds and nuts or
Yeah, I mean, you've got to make up 2,000 calories a day, and you've got to prove that you're carrying 2,000 calories a day, every day until the last day. So you have like an expedition food, yeah, which might have 400 or 500 calories in it. And then you're looking for things like as light as it can possibly be. So you're looking for like cashew nuts to kind of nibble, or you're looking for, I mean, I found these very, very cheap little flapjack bars that were 50p, and they did the job. They got like the same calorie and, you know, makeup as like the really expensive, like £3 or £4 a bar thing. So I took some of those. To be honest, I take crystallized ginger, because that's good for the stomach, you know. Okay. And I tend to think, okay, whatever I can take to keep my diet as near to normal, as near to anything resembling what I eat at home. So I did suck up on the weight a bit, and I took some dried apricots, some dates, and my mum makes these great Mejdil dates with the marzipan in the middle, which are lovely. Yeah, marzipan dates, she makes them. And
what's in her marzipan? What is that?
Just almond paste. So it's nuts and sugar, and it really, really sweet and nice. To be honest with you, I never actually remember feeling hungry in that race. It's the last thing on your mind is food, and it just shows you how little the body can function on, and how well it can function on that. Mind you, I do lose about 5 or 6 kilos probably in the race, but you're gonna do that, you know, muscle starts to break down or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I generally have got food left, and I'm giving it away. Wow. You know, because you just don't, it's not as you would expect. And also another thing in races like that, what you think you will find that you want, you don't necessarily want. You really crave salted stuff, like salted cashews are good, and peanuts. But you're always looking at the weight, so you don't want to over fuel it. You don't want to overstock with food, because you're just not I'm certainly not going to need it. But yeah, I'm not a big eater. I'm not fussed about food. Food is just a fuel. I'm not fixated on it. So now in the UK, we've got this big explosion of like vegan food. Yeah, that's great for the animals. I'm quite concerned about where some of it's sourced, how it's sourced, the packaging of it even, and the fact that it's very heavily processed. And so it's certainly healthy for the animals, I hope, you know, but not necessarily for the individual who's just like binging on processed vegan food instead of processed non-vegan food. Yeah. I don't buy that kind of stuff. I don't have the money for it. I've never had the need for it. I mean, it's great if you have transitioned and you feel you're craving this stuff. I've for instance, I've never had a vegan ice cream. I've never felt the need. What
about like banana and ice cream, like frozen bananas in a blender?
I don't know. I'm just very, very basic, very, very basic.
Fiona, like, I'm going to have to come visit you and bring you some banana ice cream. It's just frozen bananas.
Yeah. No. I mean, I would. Yeah. I mean, I'd love that. I mean, I'd try anything. I mean, Percy does like his sweets. I have to say, he's got a penchant for all sorts of sweets. He has, and he just get nice gifts for him. And somebody bought him some huge vegan chocolate marzipan bars for Valentine's Day. So he's got those up his sleeve. But yeah, I mean, I just don't, you know, when I sit down at night for my meal, I'm that probably tired that I'm just grateful to be sitting down and having an hour where I can just like not have to work, and I can have something hot and tasty and get ready for the next day's efforts. But I'm not fussed. I'm not a fussy person. I'm certainly not a prima donna when it comes to food and measuring food, and I'm not a body as my temple person in regard to like, oh, I don't eat carbs, or I don't eat this, I'll eat whatever there is, you know, because it's there, and it's good because it's nutritious food. And you know, I don't believe there are so much bad foods, obviously, you know, within veganism. It's just the amount and quantities that you're having probably people get wrong. But yeah, so I don't care if I just eat beans and potatoes for the rest of my life, as long as animals don't suffer and the environment benefits. That's honestly the truth.
Do you ever take a day to just stop and smell the roses? Like, even God had one rest day. Like, he created the entire universe and he had one day to rest. Do you ever take a day to rest?
Depends what you kind of call rest. I mean, I might take a day when I just think, I'm just gonna. I mean, obviously, I've got to look after the animals. That's imperative, and everything to me. Been out there looking after them. I never cut corners with the animals at all. Yeah, a rest for me might be a slow 6-hour run on the seawall where I can enjoy being out there and not think about pace, just enjoy the distance and enjoy being. Yeah, I mean, not really. I mean, I don't do anything different on, like, if it's Christmas Day or my birthday. I don't do anything any different. This is what I do. It's who I am. It's what I embrace. I feel very, very blessed to be able to continue to do what I do. I rest for me is no, I don't. I don't. No, I don't do anything particular. I don't particularly watch TV. I don't particularly do anything other than what I genuinely say I do. And it's not a sacrifice, and I'm not a hero. I'm very much probably indulging myself in doing what I'm doing. I'm not looking for, this woman's a martyr. I'm not a martyr at all. I'm probably very selfish in terms of the fact that I've dedicated everything I've got in my life to doing this one thing, which was caring for others.
Kind of takes us back to what we were saying, like, this is your purpose, and it's God designs it to, when we're in our purpose and we're fulfilling it, it's enjoyable.
Yeah. So I think for God to have designed a purpose and then give you the opportunity of fulfilling it, how could you feel anything but blessed to be able to carry out that work? That's honestly, truly what I believe.
Same. That's really beautiful. So I just have to tell you this before the next question. I was listening to one of your interviews with my friend Nimai Delgado. You were on his podcast, and he was bragging about you to me actually a couple of years ago. And I listened to it to prepare for our interview today. And listening to you brought me to tears in a way that I know how blessed I am and how blessed we all are. But listening to you, it gave me this awareness of, wow, gratitude is so important, and it made me grateful to listen to your words, because you're so genuine, because you are so truthful, and because you're grateful. So I hope that other people, sense that as well. But I just had to tell you that you inspire gratitude in others. Okay, I want to talk about your world records. Running 7 marathons on 7 continents. It was Europe first, and you got first place. Australia, you got 3rd place. Asia, you got 1st place. USA, you got 1st place. Africa, 7th place. South America, 2nd place. North Pole and Antarctica, 1st place. These were Guinness World Records, right?
Yeah, basically, when I wanted to do something for the animals, and I was in 2012. I'd done the marathon of Sables. I was desperate to go back there and hit it hard without an injury. The race had kindly offered me a place, because during the 2012 fiasco, when I got the broken toes, the fractured toes, I rescued a woman who was really, really struggling in the race. She had to pack up, and they then said, this race is about passion over competition. If you want to come back the following year, you can come back. So, I mean, that people say, well, would anybody want to go back? But there was a big waiting list, there was a big waiting list to do this race. But in the meantime, the same guy who'd recommended it to me said, look, you've done it. You've done that race. You've proved you can do it. Go and do the polar races. And I said, what are they? Because I don't follow these fancy races. It's not my thing at all. And he said, North Pole, Antarctic. And I kind of just clicked, light bulb moment. If I can run a marathon at the North Pole, that is definitive, absolute rubber stamp proof that as a vegan person, I can do anything. And I thought, but there can't be a marathon at the North Pole, because that's just like silly. I just thought it'd be somewhere in like a very cold part of Norway, where there'd be a lot of snow, and we just go, oh, like, we're splitting hairs here, it's practically the North Pole. But sure enough, it was at the North Pole, or as near to the North Pole as you can be on there. And it was kind of scary. It was there was some very, very amazing, a kind of ethereal, beautiful, contemplative moments out there. But I won the race. I didn't know if I'd be able to run on ice. I mean, snow, ice, -40 or whatever. It was brutal. I mean, it was kind of thing. It was 9 laps, like just under 3 miles, and you had to. I remember coming. I only stopped a couple of times, and poor Percy got frozen. He lost his hat. I had to go back and look for it. I thought, I'm at the North Pole, about 400 meters from the finish line of this monumental race, and I'm grubbing about looking for a small bear's hat. What am I doing? And then when I found it, he couldn't get it on his head because he was frozen like this. Poor Percy. He had a terrible time. Don't go there with him. He'll be just moaning forever. And anyway, so I won the race. And then a lot of the guys there said, you know, you really can do this. I mean, you know, just do the world records, you know. What world records? You've got to be the fastest woman to run a marathon on every continent and the North Pole in time elapsed, in days. So I thought, okay, that sounds great. I'm going to do that. But when I got back and I realized how expensive it was going to be, and it was just prohibitive. But it got to August, that was April, it got to August, and the Antarctic race was in November. So I got a very, very small window of time left. It just kept going around in my head. You know, Guinness World Record for the animals. That's really something worth doing. So my parents in the end offered, they've given everything to this sanctuary over the years, everything, but they'd only got this little cottage that they live in left, and they offered to remortgage it so I could go and do this. So off I went to Australia, and I remember going to Australia. I went from the UK to Australia and back in less than 96 hours.
Wow.
And when I arrived in Adelaide, the guy in the arrivals hall was like, you know, baggage collections that way. And I said, haven't got any baggage. And he was kind of looking at me. It's like, but you've coming off the flight? Yeah, I come from Dubai. Yeah. And we got into conversation, and he said, you've come from the UK with no baggage, and are you staying with family, friends? No. And I could see he was looking quite suspicious at me. So I then said, don't worry, I've got a good reason for being here, so don't panic. He said, what's that? I said, I'm running a marathon in the morning. And he went, you have come from the UK to Australia on a day trip to run a marathon. I said, yes, that's it. And so it's like, go on, crazy lady, just take your bear, take your bags and go. Yeah, I did this amazing challenge. Every other week or whatever, I got to go to a continent, run a race. But the problem was, I thought that the people at Guinness would believe me. I didn't realize they'd actually want proof that I'd done it. So they said, okay, you've got to have somebody with you, clocking that you're running every mile of this race, because it could just be somebody on a, you know, we don't even know it's going to be you. So I thought, well, I can't do that. So I came up with the idea that I got a win or place in every race, and then the race would kind of do it for me. They would present me with a prize, so they'd validate it. So now the pressure came to not just go to the races, I got to win them or place in them, which was going to be a big challenge because I've got jet lag going on. I was tired. I've got to do this every other week or whatever. And I don't quite know how I did it. I really don't. The one in South America, that's the one I had the real problems with, because I injured my knee. And I'd combined the South America one and the Antarctic one, purely because of logistics, time away, financial. And I remember laying in the back of an ambulance, 14,500 feet up a volcano in the Atacama Desert, and thinking, how am I going to run a marathon in 3 days in Antarctica? And the guy told me, that was the end of November, he said, you won't run again this year. You will not run a marathon. You won't be able to do it. And I was absolutely bereft. And I remember just going to the motions of the journey down to Punta Arenas to Chile, and thinking, I'm never going to recover. I can't do it. And then I kind of thought, right, okay, I'm going to walk. I'm just going to try and walk around this race. I'm going to forfeit 2 world records, because at that time I was going to be the fastest woman, the quickest woman, you know, literally in running, you know. I thought, I'm going to forfeit that and just walk around and slog it out. And I'm thinking, how long does it take to walk a marathon in Antarctic? And I'm thinking, oh my, it's going to take ever. And I'd actually bought walking poles to do it with. And I got to Antarctica, absolutely incredible place, right in the middle of Antarctica Union Glacier. I don't know what happened on the start line. It was literally some sort of epiphany, some sort of blessing from somewhere that came over me. And I remember standing on the start line. I started right at the back of the race. There was a Japanese guy wearing a Santa outfit who seemed to, when the gun went off, he went speeding off. I mean, everybody just left me. And I just got this superhuman kind of metamorphosis came over me, and the pain went, and I started to run at a pace that I thought I could run at. I am quick. I am relative. When I get in an ultra running environment, I am a quick marathon runner. And I started to overtake people. And sure enough, I was soon out front of the race. I don't know where it came from. I don't know where. And yeah, and I won it. And I was the fastest woman to ever run a marathon in Antarctica. And I don't know how I did it to this day. And at the end, I think my knee, at the end, I kind of slipped and collapsed. But I think my knee went, the bad knee that I'd hurt, it was my bad knee that I'd hurt. It was like a balloon. If you look at the end of the marathon, they're holding the tape out for me to come through. And I just kind of slip over it. And the pain just came back of the injury. But for that period, it just went. It went from me. I don't know how I did what I did out there. I really don't. And, you know, we've got footage of me in the back of the ambulance in Punta Arena, in the Atacama Desert. I'm not making it up. I really was in all sorts of trouble. My knee was ballooned out. I was, and I don't know where it came from. It was a gift. It was a gift from God. Truly a gift from God that I was able to do that. I really believe that. I don't know, however, I managed to get through. I really don't. I really don't.
Fiona, that almost brings me to tears. That says to me, that's God's favor. That's divine healing. Even in that moment, it was his favor. It was a miracle. I mean, when what happened defies science and all odds. 5 days prior, you said, the doctor said you shouldn't walk for a year.
I shouldn't literally said you won't run again this year. You won't be able to do it. It was I don't know what I'd done to my knee, but I mean it was huge. And I remember we were supposed to fly to Antarctica on the Monday night. It was that was on the Thursday, I think, and on the Monday night we'd gone from the Atacama Desert down to Punta Arenas, ready to fly into Antarctica. Flying to Antarctica is a very, very, very scientific operation in terms of the fact that no plane will fly to the heart of Antarctica unless it can be sure it's got a window to land and get back to Punta Arenas. And the winds are a big factor, the weather, it's basically the vision. If they can't see to land, and if they think they're not going to have a clear spot to land, they won't go into Antarctica. And I remember that they said, we could fly Monday night, but it might be delayed till Tuesday morning. And I remember laying on the bed, trying to rest and ice this knee, thinking, please, Lord, let us fly on Tuesday morning, not Monday night. Let me have a little bit longer icing and trying to get this knee back to somewhere where I can at least bend it. And then we got the phone call about 6 o'clock that evening, the Monday night, saying we'll be going tomorrow morning. And the feeling, it's only a few hours more of rest, but it was like, I felt like the richest person in the world, that I'd got these few extra hours that I could keep on at this knee to try and get it back to something where I could at least bend it a little bit. Even on the plane from Calama down to Santiago, I kept getting up to go to the toilet. I think people thought I got something wrong with my bladder. I was just trying to keep getting up and down to try and bend my leg to just so I could get some sort of bend in it, because it was just huge. I just didn't know what to do. And as I look back, in the moment, you're just in a state of panic, fear. I didn't want to let anybody down. I was desperate to do it for the animals. But as you reflect on it, yeah, I just do not know where that run came from. I don't know how it was. I think that the whole world record experience, bearing in mind that I was literally doing this with a few weeks apart, I didn't get ill, I didn't get injured. Traveling, notoriously, you pick up things along the way, playing air conditioning. I was kind of fine, and it was almost as if there was some force that wanted me to do this more, you know, greater than we know. Yeah, and it's an amazing experience when I think back to I still, as I say, I will never know how I managed to do it in the pain I was in. It just kind of left me for those few hours, and everybody was just stunned, absolutely stunned. The race organizer didn't actually want me to go to Antarctica because he thought it'd be a liability. Yeah.
Wow. And there's no land on the North Pole, right? You have to take a special plane to get there. The ice you run on is 6 to 12 feet thick above 12,000 feet of Arctic Ocean.
Yeah, when you get to the North Pole, it's kind of amazing because the plane that they take you in there, it's a Russian plane. It's not a big plane because they can't afford to land a big plane on ice. It's going to go through the Arctic Ocean because it can cause like a tsunami under the ice, which creates a hole, and then the plane would just go down into it. And then the plane goes back for more runners. So you're then left at the North Pole, and I'm kind of laying in this super hot tent because they put you in super hot tents because you can't literally come out from that kind of cold and heat your body up. You've got to be kind of, it's like a sauna in there. And I'm laying on this bunk thinking, okay, my address now, Fiona Oakes, the North Pole. I'm at the North Pole and there's no way I'm leaving the North Pole. And it was just an amazing, surreal experience. And I was very blessed and very privileged to be able to do it. But there's not one moment that I was out there that I've not wasted and doesn't live with me now. And I use that as the energy to keep fueling myself on in the future. I haven't taken any of it for granted and never will.
I want to talk about your mom for a minute. Your mother has said in response to people asking her if she's proud of you, no, because pride would reflect onto her. And she looks at you in awe. And then the guilt kicks in. The guilt of having brought a life into the world that is so compassionate and feeling, that you have to push yourself to these tremendous lengths so that you can try to build a platform so you can speak for those that have no voice. You've been on talk shows and they sometimes have not aired your extreme achievements because you mentioned you're vegan and the meat and dairy industry funds them. The main reason you do what you do is to prove you do not need meat and dairy to achieve athletic greatness. You've been vegan for 40 years and every accomplishment you've achieved has been fueled by only plants. As a leader in the vegan movement who has faced many challenges, all in the name of standing for what you knew was right in a time when it was unpopular, ridiculed, and even opposed by many, how do you feel now seeing the way veganism has grown?
Yeah, I mean, I'm amazed. I mean, it's become very commercial, but there's no doubt about it. And I did always know that unless big business could make money from veganism, they probably wouldn't allow it to expand in the way it has. In terms of a lot of the big manufacturers, you know, even cosmetic manufacturers now, vegan, it's got to be vegan on there. It would be easy I really have found it very, very difficult to promote veganism. I was actually told when I went on one show, when I came back from the North Pole, not to mention the fact that I was vegan. They didn't want even the word mentioning. It would be easy to kind of look back and with a certain amount of bitterness in terms of the fact that what I've been saying for 40 years, living, breathing, feeling, now has been taken on board, but wouldn't be taken on board at the time. But I'm just glad. I'm just actually glad that people are starting to listen and wake up. So, you know, in whatever way, shape or form, to have been any part of it. And it seemed hopeless at times. Promoting veganism seemed absolutely hopeless. But I always say that I'm very lucky that I was not in a situation where I was helpless to do something, because at least I could do a tiny bit at the time. I could run, I could have the animal sanctuary, I could look after animals, and I could have the freedom of speech to actually keep saying what I believed, even if others didn't want to listen, or the majority didn't want to listen. I was able and am able still to speak out for the animals. So any move forward has got to be looked upon only with just that I feel that very blessed to have been part of it, and that we're coming through now, and hopefully the world is changing for the better.
Yeah.
And hopefully it is, and for the better for humanity as well as for the animals
Yep.
in conjunction.
Yep.
So yeah, and just it is quite because now you talk to people and you say, you know, at a time when you couldn't mention veganism, or people didn't even know what the word meant, and they're kind of, whoa. And I think, you know, it's probably been on the change about 2, 3, 4 years in the UK, and I think how easy it would have been to do it earlier, and if only the imperative had been there to do it. But you know, it's never too late, and so now if the change is happening, then it's got to be great.
Tell us about Tower Hill Stable Sanctuary. Where did the animals come from? Like what situations they come from, and how can people help you?
Yeah, I mean, the sanctuary is part of me. It's part of who I am, part of who my family are. It started in 1996. We started the sanctuary because I mean, I've always loved animals and had animals in my life, but I was rescuing in a very, very small way, small animals from my actual domestic home, and then big animals, horses, farms. I kept them at farms, and I rented a field for my 7 horses, and I'd rescued, and I was cycling into work in London and then coming home in the evening and checking them before I went, and you know, when I got home. And I remember going one evening and I called the horses, and 6 came and 1 didn't, and Oscar had been impaled on a fence. He was a racehorse that I'd rehabilitated, and he nearly lost his hindquarter. I mean, he nearly lost his life, to be honest with you. And he was at the vet for 13 weeks, and at that point we'd been standing on kind of a precipice. I knew that the model I was working of paying somebody a phenomenal amount of money where I could keep horses, I would rather be able to have them on site and be able to look after them myself under my own supervision. It wasn't ideal, but how can I fix it? How could I change it? I mean, I don't come from a super wealthy family or landowners or anything like that. So it seemed it was the impossible dream. But when Oscar had his accident, all my family, it can't go on like this. We cannot go on like this. And in the 13 weeks he was at the vet, we managed to raise enough money for a deposit on the sanctuary, just a small place with some land. And I didn't really start it as a sanctuary. I started it as a place of sanctuary for the animals that I'd already rescued, including Oscar. And it was my big promise to him that he would come home from the vet and he would spend time living with us and his friends. And he was 13 weeks at the vet, and he got the okay to come home 2 days before I took the keys to the sanctuary. And it was really a struggle. I mean, that's amazing struggle, a familial struggle. Obviously all my parents, everything they got went into it, but I'd got a great aunt, Auntie Nancy, and she was 98 years old, and my mum told her what was going on, and she had a sock under her bed, under a mattress, filled with money for a funeral, £1,000 for a funeral. And she said, give this to Fiona. And I just thought, I'm going to have to make sure I don't die just yet. Just get that sanctuary, get that place for those animals. And that was in 1996. And it's grown since then. And when I got land of my own, I could then start taking in animals that you can't put a livery or on, like cattle and pigs, the most maligned animals, the most exploited animals. Yeah, I mean, where do they come from? It'd be easy to tell you where they don't come from. Some people just rescue them and then realize they can't keep them. Farmers reach out to me, unbelievably. A lot of farmers who've got pet herds, or they're retiring from farming, they'll have a favorite cow or a favorite pig, and they'll say, well, you know, I don't want to send them to slaughter, will you take them? We had one guy desperate. He got a pig unit, which is awful. He'd got one special pig that he'd nursed through. There'd been a fire there. He'd nursed this pig through the fire. She got a tail that had been burnt onto her back in this fire, and it was his father's farm. His father was packing up, and he said, I just don't want her to go to slaughter, will you take her? We had a call from a desperate woman, a slaughterhouse about 40 miles away from me. A pig had made a run for it. She'd run into this woman's garden. She was desperately trying to keep the pig in the garden, bearing in mind this poor pig, Amelie, was frightened out of her mind. She was people from the actual slaughterhouse, there were the police, there were trading standards there, and she was desperately trying to find someone who would come and take this animal to safety. She didn't want, because we were trying to round her up and take her back into the slaughterhouse. So yeah, I mean, loads and loads of stories like that. I had a call from a guy who runs the livestock market, an awful place, and he asked me if I would consider taking in 9 Highland cattle for his friend who was dying of Parkinson's disease and sadly now has passed on, and he couldn't think of anyone else that would rise to the challenge and take these enormous beasts in. And he said, I just thought of you, I've heard about you, would you do it? And yeah, for sure, you know, I've got Highland cattle, so they're the ones with the great big horns. So yeah, they come from all sources. I don't discriminate. The important thing to say is I've got the sanctuary in Russia as well, and I work a lot within Russia. I've done for 20 years. I don't see the animals here as mine. I don't see any animals belonging to me. Just likewise, I don't think any less of an animal I've never met in India that I might be able to help the one that I can physically touch here. I believe they're all God's creatures, and we should work as a global community to help them. So these ones here, yeah, I'm lucky. Physically, I can change their lives, but I'm looking beyond that. The lives ones that I'm probably never going to meet, can I change their lives too? So I don't discriminate. Wherever they come from, whatever their past history is, that's gone. When they're here, that's when their new life begins. I don't like to know too much so-called back history about animals or behavioural history, because how they behaved in a different life is not necessarily how they will behave here. And I like to allow them to free roam, and with me supervising them and providing for them, but I don't put myself on some pedestal that thinks that they owe me anything, or I would want them to owe me anything. My most passionate belief and hope is that I can integrate them amongst each other, for them to find solace amongst their own kind in the most natural environment I can provide in an unnatural world. So I like the cattle and the horses to roam. I don't segregate male and female. Obviously, I don't breed animals here. I can't do that. So we, you have to make sure that they, don't breed. Right. But I like them to roam free in large herds and realign themselves with who they are, naturally are. So the horses to be free to wander in herds, old and young together. A lot of people don't like old and young animals together, but I think that the old animals have got so much experience with which they can impart to the younger ones, and the younger ones keep the older ones young, if you like, and I've got a foal. She's 7 months old, but she constantly goes around the older horses, and you can see that the older mares love it, and she's sort of nudging them or wants to play, and it's kind of lovely to watch. I was contacted last year by a farmer who had a Highland cow steer, and he said, I'm going to have to send him to slaughter. He keeps escaping. He's in a herd, but he's in a peer group herd in terms of they're all his age. He needs to be in a natural herd, really. That's what the vet has said. He needs to be in a hierarchical herd where there are older cattle, younger cattle, females, babies. And he said, you're the only one I can find that runs them like that. And I said, bring him along. So Bart arrived, and from the minute he arrived, I never knew he was here. He just settled in, found his place in the herd, and the others just welcomed him. That's very humbling with animals. They welcome each other in a way that humans don't. They don't carry the horrible baggage that humans carry, the greed, the jealousy, the egos. They don't have that. They are pure, they are innocent, and it's an honor to be able to be around them and to learn from them. I try honestly to run this sanctuary by getting amongst them. I don't literally go out and eat hay and grass and think I'm one of them, but I like to be their human voice on earth. So kind of articulate what they're trying to say and what they need, and I'm translating it and giving them what they need rather than what I choose to give them on my terms, me delivering it on their terms, if I'm kind of making sense.
Yes.
So I like to keep it very natural. So the pigs live in a wood. and they forage, and it's really interesting. I like to go and plant things in the wood for them to find, and you know, like fruits and stuff like that. But it's really interesting when you go in their wood, and I don't go in their wood too much because that's their wood, that's their home. I find little paths leading around to little nests that they might have made in little things, and it's really lovely. It's humbling to see, but it brings sadness, because I know then that the ones that are confined in these horrible factory units, they are those pigs. They are those same pigs that are wandering in this wood, but they're not allowed to be wandered. They're not allowed to be free. And I think that that's the main message. Say for these races that you do for a week long, I know my mind goes off in funny tangents, but you know, we realize then, I've done it with some what I would call posh people who are used to quite luxury, that just chuck money at races and think, you know, I've done this bucket list job. But when it's stripped down after a day or two, if they're still in the race, they realize, I think it's a big leveler, that we are just human animals. We need the same things: food, shelter, water, company, just the basics of like, they're the things that really matter. And I was watching something and somebody said, oh, you know, Elon Musk, he's the richest man in the world. I said, yeah, but what's his currency? Is his currency money or compassion? Because honestly, I consider myself to probably be one of the richest people in the world in terms of the fact that I can actually help these animals. And I feel that I'm lucky that I was blessed enough to be awakened at such a young age to what I want to do for the rest of my life, what I'm able to do for the rest of this purpose, this journey, and be able to carry it out. So, you know, with regard to how do you judge wealth, the poorest person on earth could be the richest man on earth because he's got compassion. And that's honestly, yeah, it's what I truly believe. And just to be among the animals and see them happy and contented, that's got to be the biggest gift or the biggest prize that you could possibly have. And you know, you realize the real value of things, like, you know, health is true wealth, you know. And you know, people, you know, if they haven't awoken to that fact over the past couple of years, they never will, kind of thing. But and taking responsibility for your own health and preserving it, you have a duty to preserve what you've been blessed to be given. Yeah, that's true. And look after it.
What fun new endeavors do you have coming up to help the animals, and how will you help the animals post running one day?
Well, I've got my own race now, running for good in Morocco in October, and we want to promote that because it is all about, that's what Keegan said, running for good, for the good of others. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to highlight, you know, not just veganism, but the way that being vegan impacts on a particular environment. We're using the desert because I run and I love these races in the desert. So desertification, water poverty, all these issues that all combine. So I'll be doing that in October. I'm in the London Marathon this year, so on the elite start again, so I'm training for that. But just literally just getting out there and spread the message peacefully, and also to say, you know, it's all relative. The speed and what you do is relative. It's just the most important thing is encouraging people to understand that even if you can do, you might think that what you're doing is insignificant, but if we all do little insignificant things, that it builds into a tsunami of significance. That's what I'm trying to promote, if you like, and just keep going. I mean, obviously it is tough to keep going in these kind of very, very difficult economical and financial and uncertain times, in unstable times. But you know, each day you wake up and you're blessed. I kind of wake up at 3:30, I check that all the bits are there and functioning, and I roll out of the bed, and you know, I'm living in the present at the minute and just being glad for the present, because I think a lot of people do get swept away in kind of unattainable goals in the future, and the present is passing them by and they're not appreciating it enough. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment. I'm at the moment, honestly, but just been very, very grateful for every little blessing that is bestowed upon me and acknowledging them as blessings. That's what my goal and where I'm at the minute.
Last question, and I promise you I would ask you this. And he's made a couple of appearances already. Who is Percy?
Oh, Percy Percy is this little bear, this little chap here, this rather handsome little fellow here that accompanies me everywhere. He's in the vegan runners. He's got his vegan runner top on. The trouble is, his top, he's so small of body that it says it's vegan runners because there is a V at the back. But he's my little friend, and I like teddy bears. He's got a big version of Percy here. Wait.
Oh my goodness! How cool!
And, yeah, I like teddy bears, and they're just smiley, happy little ego kind of. My little alter ego is Percy Bear. Percy can say things that I could never say to people. So that when we're in the desert, Percy would say some things to people that I couldn't say to people. And he's just a cheeky little smiley chap that actually is kind of, I suppose he was like a little olive branch at the start in terms of, she can't be this kind of strange commodity. She's carrying a little teddy bear and everybody smiles at a teddy bear. And it's amazing people do smile at a teddy bear. But I like him. And Keegan said, what a great, sort of tactical, strategic, educational tool. It's going on like this. And I'm thinking, no, Keegan, I just like teddy bears. And in 2013, when I'd won at the North Pole, one of the most thrilling things that happened was some guy in Brazil, Pedro, he started the Percy supporter group. And it was little teddy bear. Percy had his own, because he runs all the races with me. I can't remember. And he's got his own little fan club of bears and people around the world. There's some pictures, kids especially, of their teddy bears, and they're all in Percy supporter group. And then people started to send me teddy bears. So I've got like a house full of teddy bears now, and I love them. Oh. So that's Percy, and he's just a cheeky little chappy that I love to take around with me. And you know what? Somebody did say to me, I don't like the limelight at all. I do not like to be the focus of attention. So kind of Percy's the double act. He takes away the focus of attention, so I can just go on in the background and kind of like unnoticed. Yeah, because I don't think I'm humble in any way, shape or form. I just realise my real value. And I think a lot of people kind of get carried away on their own self-importance, and that's something that I never would do. It's not me. So yeah, Percy's just like my best friend, traveling companion, and I always look at him and he's got a big smiley face, and who couldn't smile back at Percy?
I love that. So I'd like to end on a very powerful quote you made. We all have essential needs. We all need water, shelter, and food, and also not being in fear or in pain. They are all things that really, really matter, and that's the same for animals as well. Fiona, thank you so much for spending time with us today. You have an incredible will and are a shining example of what a human can achieve in a lifetime with a goal and endless dedication to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and sending love to all your listeners.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Love, Gianna and
Fiona Oakes and Percy Bear.